Maybe it's your attitude that stinks. Maybe you should try a different approach. There's not a conspiracy to kill ya. Of course there's not a grandiose state, local and government oppressive force to desecrate your soul and rob you of prosperity. You can't die in a hospital and literally have it called a fatal attempt and a lethal injury and nothing happened. Of course someone would stick up for you if that happened. You know, a family member, a friend, everyone would be outraged. The Health Complaints Commissioner, they would definitely be on your side. There's no way that the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner, if you're a mental health client of our hospital, would deny that even happened. Of course the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner would not be outnumber you and be caught out, be being biased due to them abandoning you and favouring the hospital to protect those in positions of money, power and privilege because you're utterly and absolutely framed. Now, considering even if that were to occur, like no one actually cared that you died, then of course, if you went to the Ombudsman, of course Ben Calder from the Victorian Ombudsman would see that using an illegal contraband, such as a vape pen, is contravening the human rights law and is clearly an issue that needs to be, at the very least, apologised for, and he'd never condone it. There's nothing to see. The government cares for you. Oh, you're absolutely psychotic. I mean, they took you into hospital because you had delusions of persecution, and they were absolutely all in your head. A conspiracy to murder isn't a correct way to describe the profound, systemic, local, state and federal government oppression that you've had to face. It's obviously you and your mental health issues that are at play here. The Attorney General, she's awesome. Michaelia Cash, what a legend. I've got a whole lot of issues under the Michaelia Cash, like the Australian Human Rights Centre, free kicking $1 million case to the opposition. But the government had nothing to do with that because I wouldn't have known that it was all foiled because I went to the company directly and got an atonement from them. So obviously there's no crime committed there. And Comcare are an entirely reputable and beautiful set of people, and they really help people who have valid work cover compensation claims. And in addition to that, Paul Fowler, he's not corrupt. Paul Fowler from WorkSafe, from Comcare, he wasn't the old head at WorkSafe. Therefore, if I had an issue with a Comcare appeal, I could easily go to WorkSafe and have them help me. And they wouldn't reject me. And they wouldn't say just go to Comcare, where I'd still be rejected by Paul Fowler. That would never happen. I love how HCF were just so pleasant and easy to deal with when I left my place of work, because I'd been framed in 2 VOCAT cases and triggered by my clients' sexual abuse and incest and child rapes, as my same thing of the sexual abuse case was going on for me with VOCAT. And because my magistrate from Geelong Magistrates Court, well, my lawyer took over 3.5 years and 6 different lawyers to get it in front of the magistrate, and all that time they didn't watch me suffer and become really sad and pessimistic and even kind of suicidal about it. That would never happen. And it would never happen that it finally get to the magistrate and your lawyer rings you up and says, oh, it fell over in court, that's it. We'll wait till you hear your instructions. And I say, hang on, you can't just say that. Like, where's the evidence? And they would never say, oh, that's personal information. They would never say about a sexual abuse case just after your lawyer left it go so long watching you nearly kill yourself, and then they illegally gave you an outcome, and you wouldn't be able to, you'd be easily able to go to a government agency and report that. There's no way that after all that happened that they'd wait literally and intelligently until it was out of time, so you couldn't appeal, and then you wouldn't beg for an element of existence that it even occurred. You wouldn't have to do that because it'd be just so done by the book. And the magistrate would never say, you were doomed to fail from the start. Because that kind of colourful language to a sexual abuse victim is really abhorrent. That would never happen, and it has nothing to do with your prior life as a framed person. Shift were great. They stepped in straight away and they acknowledged within 5 days my claim, and it hasn't been a whole year that they've banned me from calling. It hasn't been a whole year that they haven't paid me. It hasn't been a whole year that I've found out that I'm under investigation. And it hasn't been a whole year since I found out they were doctoring fraudulent PDFs, of which I caught them. And there's no way they could deny that they would acknowledge me if I sent that evidence to Sheena Jack, the CEO. I got my money from HCF, and it wasn't acting in cohesion with AFCA, who had overdue determinations for over 2.5 years. That sounds illogical. They've got to work under AFSA's regulations, which say be fair and equitable. And they also say that it has to be done in a certain amount of time. So clearly, when I emailed AFCA and HCF when I was out of work, off on leave, that they would act together to try and bring some financial ease to my situation, in that I would not become really distressed and hungry, and further that I didn't know that I was already framed and everyone was already against me, that I would be isolated and then pathologized and set up to fail. And then there's no way you would go on the website and say, I wouldn't be broke if my former partner didn't threaten a hitman on me, steal my car, and all the other crimes I know already he's done. But and also like everyone would have just acted together to they wouldn't have pathologized you and put you in a psychiatric ward, because obviously everyone sees the human rights justice issues that exist and don't see an illness. A multi-millionaire on paper if justice comes. Comcare wouldn't have said get screwed and take it to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. And if they did, they'd totally acknowledge that a person with probably an acquired brain injury affecting the hippocampus because you bled out and you had no blood left and was found with no pulse in the hospital, which you obviously got justice for, they wouldn't have kicked the can along the road and forced you to go into interviews, and they wouldn't force the hearing to go ahead. And there's every reason to believe that you would understand exactly the reasons why they're rejecting you, and you would understand ahead of time, because you've got so many people on your side, like family and friends and lawyers and professional people, and you're never acting absolutely alone in isolation, that you just would be totally at ease with going forward through a forced thing on, I think it's the in about 6 days' time. It's the 25th of January now. And that would never happen because everything would be totally comfortable and it wouldn't be forced at all. That's like not a lot of money, 95% of your age for 45 weeks and then keep going on. And all this issue has got nothing to do with money. And it's got nothing to do with power, money, privilege, and people in revered positions in cushy places who act with entire cowardice to be one stick in the faggot of things that hit me over the head. Like, they're all great people. A TPD payout from work covers because you got a maimed in the head brain injury from the systemic abuse that folded back on itself and actually caused you to suicide, as long as the prior stuff. That's not a lot of money, and you probably know exactly how much it is. And in addition to that, you were deserving of it, and if you were deserving of it, you'd absolutely get it. And there's no way that you would have emailed Mclean, the Attorney General, and there's no way that she would have condoned all this from AFCA, from APRA, from ASIC, from Africa and the Human Rights Commission, and there was no way, even though you said, and please don't send me to the same helpline because my book was Sane's Book of the Year there, and I've already spoken to the manager there, that Jack Heath, that there's no way that she could actually gaslight you and reject you, and that's not a common thing to do to people in politics, and there's no way that she would have sent you to the same helpline and just totally and utterly rejected your whole complaint. And hang on, another person under the another statutory organisation under the Attorney General is the Ombudsman, the National Ombudsman, and they always listen to you without prejudice and with full dignity. And they've even articulated a whistleblower method by which you could be safe from death threats and you could live a life free from oppression, because that's what everyone deserves, and that's what happens in a just and equal society. The General's on your side, and you didn't hear from the Ombudsman today, and you weren't given the runaround, and there's no video on here that even describes anything to do with that. Ahead with this, there's no way they're going to set you up and put you in jail and try and frame you with like being a pedo or a dog fucker or a rapist or something like that. They're not going to try and shame you whatsoever. They're actually very courteous and kind to you, and they would never pathologise you to put you in a psych ward, and you haven't actually been threatened that will be the case. Your family, they're totally understanding. Your sister would never say on your birthday, "Fuck off, you schizo and you druggo, and get the fuck out of our lives." And there's no way you'd never hear from her again until maybe over 7 months later, when you actually sent an articulate email to the family acknowledging what they've witnessed and how they have an act. And she wouldn't condone you for getting accepted into a psychiatric ward at that time, just before Christmas, where and you wouldn't have caught COVID because there's no risk at all. It's totally supportive. Like he wouldn't say you don't live within your means when you actually live on about $300 a week and your rent's $380 a week. She got flashed at when she was a kid. That means that her sexual abuse is equal and absolutely in line and 100% legend with your experience. And she's right all the time because she's perfect. Not. You weren't rejected from the Ombudsman and IBAC and ASIC and APRA as a whistleblower. Of course I believe you. Of course you're not the enemy of the government. And of course you're not some infamous vagrant like Ned Kelly. Conspiracy to pervert the course of justice is a crime that's taken very seriously in this country. And so is victimisation. Victimisation would never occur. In fact, there's no way that you could ever be totally and utterly banned from the Victorian Human Rights and Equal Opportunity Centre. And additionally, totally broken-nosed by the Australian Human Rights Centre. Because everyone cares about human rights, even if you die. You deserve to die. Anyway, you were saved anyway. You were hardly even dead. The hospital kicked you out. That's rubbish, they kicked you out. They let you go ethically. They knew where you were staying. They knew you had a place to stay. They knew you had a job. They knew you had money. They knew you had food. And they let you go in an entirely equitable manner that was in line with human rights litigation. And they followed up very, very well with following up a suicidal patient. And you didn't even have to wait very long to see a specialist. In fact, it only took, how long was it? Just over 11 months to see a psychiatrist. And that's totally and utterly cool. Just because you can't feel your feet, like that you've got a pair of dead socks on, doesn't mean that you've got any issue to complain to the doctor about. And in addition to that, just because the Werribee Mercy Hospital, the hospital in which you literally died at and then was accidentally recovered and revived, and the Health Complaints Commissioner covered up, and then the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner were called out biased with Alex Tinter, and the Ben Calder, the Ombudsman, condoned that as nothing to see, and because you're absolutely cooked from the top, just because of all that and you can't feel your feet, it doesn't really mean anything. And there's nothing wrong at all with the CEO of the hospital, Dave Stevenson. Hello, Dave. There's nothing wrong with him at all personally emailing you and saying, if you've got a problem with the hospital, sue me directly and personally, knowing full well that you A, can't go to police, and B, can't get a lawyer because you're banned from the police and you're banned from getting a lawyer, and that this is totally cool. And in addition to that, he would never have the agency or the audacity to do that in such a vile, audacious way. And in addition to that, Ben Calder said there was an apology from the hospital. That's right. Because they apologised not for the systemic conspiracy that ended in my murder, or the abandonment of duty of care, or the entire framing, maiming, shaming, victimisation of one singular person, or the misdiagnosis, or any other numerous things. They actually apologised for the broken toilet brush that I tried to use to sever my artery, and they wrapped it up in my clean clothes and delivered the dirty toilet brush back to me. And in the apology, they said, "We're sorry, we don't usually give away hospital property." And that's totally and utterly cool. And there's no tongue-in-cheek big FU at that in that whatsoever. And Ben Calder was absolutely right to see that there was nothing wrong with that. You weren't maimed after you left hospital. They didn't put you on job seeker instead of the pension. That'd be silly. It's really ridiculous that they all knew that there was a court case coming up and that there were litigious things happening. And that Mike 121, the person who's hosted your website from the old people at White Dog Green Frog, they never would have just stepped right out of the blue and deleted all of your websites, all of your emails, all of your backups, and all of your evidence. They would have never done that, and they would have never blocked you immediately and done it without warning and with impunity, because there's no way that they could do that absolutely at all. Like, that's just crazy talk. And there's no way that if you went to the business.gov.au or business.vic.gov.au, they would all care about it. And if they didn't, they might want to send you to the Small Business and Family Ombudsman, but they would never just reject the complaint. And if they did, they would send you to the Telecommunications Industry Ombudsman, and they would never ever have rejected that whatsoever. And none of this evidence is on your website. NDIS are totally cooperative with you. They haven't rejected you a local area coordinator. They haven't refused to pay 42 plus invoices that they knew from your landlord, Hung, that you would be kicked out as a homeless person before Christmas, and they wouldn't totally let that just go down the line and just totally reject that. And even if they did, like, they wouldn't blame plan partners, and plan partners wouldn't blame the NDIS. And in addition to that, I forgot what I was going to say. You wouldn't have had to email the NDIS minister and then have a representative call you weeks later, and they would be really helpful, and they'd sort it all out, and you would have a plan review, going back in time, to try and make up for the injustices. It wouldn't be months ahead, like in April. That wouldn't happen. Can't be refused a lawyer. You can't email Greg Hunt and Bill Shorten and Adam Band and Katie Hall and Mark Latham and a whole lot of other people, and they would absolutely come to your aid as a person who has really acted as an advocate for the last 25 years and even spoken in Australian Parliament. They'd be totally on your side. And even if you emailed Dan Andrews, Dan Andrews wouldn't see you as a pathologized mad person. He would actually really revere and help you through the thing, and he wouldn't send you to the support helpline of the Werribee Mercy Hospital where you've already been rejected from. They wouldn't have sent a message to you after all this time saying, "Oh, we had to stop because of an impasse." And we all know what impasse is. None of that would have ever happened. From contacting HCF, how ridiculous. Yeah, ASIC wouldn't have accepted your bankruptcy because they would have known that you were owed all this money, at least $500,000 from your former partner. I mean, that's as easy as a walk in the park. And of course, if you had to provide evidence to ASIC that you didn't have to go bankrupt, they would totally come to the party, and the senior people there would be totally on your side, and your bankruptcy would be wiped easy. You wouldn't be rejected whistleblower rights from APRA because you're not a Commonwealth employee. I mean, there's no way they do that because you actually have a registration number with the federal government. Duh. Having a psychiatrist or psychologist after a whole year after killing yourself and then living on, say, like $40, $50 a week for a whole year in poverty isn't a symptom of the system that's kicking the can down the road, delaying and deferring you any justice whatsoever until you and aid and abetting your own death. That's not even happening, and that it even happened. That's not indicative of just a bad public mental health system, and it's definitely not indicative of a conscious, malicious, and intentional method to make you go batshit crazy by your own and kill yourself of your own accord before you get justice, because you're not worth millions and millions of dollars all up, and to be fair, nothing would happen to Australian society or the politicians or anything like that if one domino went over and the whole fucking lot went over. And they would never frame you before that happened. The Attorney General hasn't written to you. You're dreaming. You must be mad. There's no way that a doctor and human rights awarded advocate and an artist of 30 years and a person who's spoken in Parliament to Montreal to Dubbo, spoken hundreds of times, as altruistic as he can be for other people all this time, there's no way that the systems of oppression and the conspiracy to pervert the course of justice and victimisation would leave you squatting with no money, barely any food, no healthcare, denied medication, rendered a voiceless vagrant, no avenue to complain, banned from police, banned from litigation, a literal refugee in your own country, totally innocuous in your agency to act, banned from reporting crime to the police, banned from any litigation at the legal bar, living as a marginalised and victimised person lower than shark shit, systemically oppressed, and in addition to that, marginalised already, now with an additional acquired brain injury from the near-death experience that was the systemic conspiracy and oppression that was the murder that has now marked your memory and makes you a bit cray-cray. And you wouldn't be utterly framed and systemically rejected. You would be absolutely believed by everyone, acknowledged and respected. Because everything with sentience deserves respect, and that's the lay of the land. Could totally admit that this has all happened and come off without a scratch. Why they probably wouldn't want to kill you before they got a bruise on their nose. Why you got a rejection from the office of Prime Minister and Cabinet? He's so he's so dramatic and so grandiose sometimes. Drop acid with Kathy Freeman. He could be banned from calling places like APRA and NHPRPC and the police and the federal police and so many others. And there's no way that your email address and actual IP could be blocked from the federal family circuit court because of your former partner, and you couldn't be blocked from the federal police. There's no way that could happen in hell because they don't take notice of your IP, your computer's not hacked, and no suspicious things have ever happened on your computer. And you don't have evidence of that, and it's not on the website killing.info. No evidence of your relationship with your former partner on the website, like such as when you gave him the wedding ring or when he admitted that he had a job that he couldn't speak at, or that when you just before you went to the hospital, a random person said, "I think you need help" on your website, and it said, "Mate, get help now and publish proof, or I'm reporting you to your professional body in NDIS. If I don't see proof on your site by Monday, I'm reporting you." And there's no way that could be my former partner because we just have nothing to do with each other. And accepting money from other places. He didn't invest $1.2 million in an overseas offshore tax haven made from the money from a house he sold selling cocaine, and that wouldn't have shown up on any tax record that you care to look at. It's really hard to find these things out. There's not a chance in hell that someone would die or be at risk of death, and no one would care. And in addition to that, if you call police and dial 000, they would obviously be right on the case, and they'd believe everything you say, and they wouldn't track your number, and they wouldn't deny you, and they wouldn't just go, "Well, let's pathologise him and lock him up." Such thing as victimisation and vilification via a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice that killed Rich Mclean by proxy. Mclean hasn't been framed. No one's shamed Richard at all. No one's maimed him, and he hasn't been blamed. The murder wasn't whitewashed. And even if that did happen, which it didn't, they wouldn't crucify him then and desecrate his prosperity, his ability to earn money, his ability to acquire money, his ability to have money, his ability for healthcare or access to healthcare, and they would definitely not silence his voice, and they would definitely not aid and abet his death by proxy. That would never happen. Evidence of this ever existing. As far as I'm concerned, I don't give a fuck, or Rich deserves to die. I ignore it. I could aid and abet that happening. Thirsty work. Matter of fact, I got it now. Oh, we're sorry. It falls outside the area of our expertise. Isn't a panacea. So go fuck yourself. HCF in congruence with AFCA didn't cause my financial duress, as well with work cover and my litigation for the corrupt Geelong magistrate and the corrupt affray in which there was no clear evidence that I wasn't the principal aggressor, because there's a video of it that I could easily get from the police. Like, none of that caused financial distress, and if it did, it wasn't partially responsible for your incarceration. Stress is a mental illness. Who'd have thought? And you know what? HCF had nothing to do with that. You haven't got evidence to back all this up on your website. See, you didn't do it by the book. You didn't do it for years and years through the right processes, and you weren't gaslighted, ostracised, excluded, neglected, and framed, shamed, and set up to fail over and over again to aid and abet your death in conspiracy. Hi, Crystal. And that never happened. And because you've had to resort to these desperate ways of actually having a chance at existence that's barely equitable, we're going to demonise you, and there's going to be no atonement for this whatsoever, because you're an evil fucking cunt. We here at the government acknowledge when we've done something wrong, and we act for our citizens. Our citizens are our priority, and if it's proven to us beyond reasonable doubt, we will of course atone for the mistakes that have robbed people, or one particular person, of their life, their dignity, their human rights, their family relationships, and their friends, and their agency to justice. And we will admit that we stood in the way of that, and we'll admit that there's a conspiracy to pervert the course of justice, and of course we will atone our place in the world with Richard as an inconceivably vast oppression against one singular person, which is, well, Just fair game, really. But Richard's an extortionist. Money's his currency. Don't you understand? He wasn't given $100,000 and then the guy said it was a mistake, so he gave it back. That never happened. He's obviously brought all of this upon himself. He's not a reputable person who has ever done anything for anyone else. And our entire side, which is basically the entire government or anyone with a .vic.gov.au or a .gov.au, is entirely against him. And that's totally equitable and it's totally fair. And we acknowledge that Richard has played an important role in advocating for marginalised people who has less than himself for many, many years, probably 25 years. And we readily admit when we're wrong, and there is no inconceivable amount of vertigo when Rich thinks to himself, is this really happening to me? And there's absolutely no reason to believe that the prejudices that Richard has already signed up to, such as being a porf or being mad or having taken drugs in the past, he's not easily exploitable whatsoever. We wouldn't use any way to use those things against him. That'd be abhorrent. Oh, come on, we're the NDIA. We're the statutory authority that's supposed to look after marginalised people. Of course we'll intervene now that we know he's homeless with no food and no rent and squatting, and we actually watched that happen and didn't do anything. And yeah, we're totally here for him. It's not a conspiracy if Rich has contacted particular leaders of state and federal politics, and they've all acted with the same kind of delay, defer, gaslighting, rejection, oppression, because everyone wants to get their hands dirty with Rich's stuff, because to seem to be siding with him isn't going to go against them whatsoever. You see, if I had cancer and I was rejected an oncologist for an entire year, they'd be fucking outraged. But of course, mental illness is apparently, if it apparently exists, and it's not proven to be factual delusions, exists in the same currency. You see, if someone actually was discriminated and oppressed so much that they chopped themselves, which really is a rational response to physical, actual things, rather than a mental illness. But even so, if they were rejected from a mental health institution, having to be named something to justify them having in there, and were released to a community mental health centre, it would be obvious that they would get the treatment they need and deserve as a suicide survivor and as a person highly at risk, because as the research shows, it's very at risk in the next few days or weeks that they'll re-suicide, and it's obvious that that help would be given, and it wouldn't take nearly a year to see a psychiatrist. Now that would be preposterous. Oh, that Rich Mclean guy. Oh, what a head fuck. I mean, obviously he's not an infamous vagrant that we're all sitting by and watching rot and die, and that he has lots of support from statutory agencies and the government because we care. Well, I just gotta say, the law is the law, and when you're right, you're right. And when you're free, it means you've done nothing wrong, unless you're being framed for something in case you stick your nose out. But that wouldn't happen because we're not an oppressive society, and that wouldn't double back, clearly confirming our confirmation bias that we actually have fucked over that guy. So justice exists, and it happens unequivocally and can all the time. Just happens all the time. There is no other option than for legal and equitable justice and representation for anyone in this country who is all on equal footing and who are even, and there's equity and equality and justice for all because we're the government, and that's what we put forward, and that's what happens. LMCT 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And just always remember, kids and adults, it's safe to come out. Heteronormativity is not a thing. Abuse never happens, and when sexual abuse happens, it's always believed. There is no corruption. There is no systemic persecution. Oppressive government regimes do not exist, and the government always cares for you. In actual fact, it's kind of like the maiming and framing and victimisation and vilification of one particular person opposed by the whole thing, which would never happen, which would never be me, is kind of the equivalent of like, I'm not meaning to be culturalist here, but it's kind of like a stoning, you know, like when they get one person who's done really nothing wrong, framed by the society, and they've been libbered and slandered to death, and they get tied up to the waist and buried in dirt, and then each of the villagers comes across and throws one stone and just, you know, knocks them the fuck in the side of the head or anywhere on the body, and then this collection of sticks that are the public service or anyone employed by the government is the collective faggot that's popped me on the head and actually killed me. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. And it wasn't covered up. And it wasn't covered up by an ombudsman. And I do have access to the police. I do have access to a lawyer. Justice exists. And nothing's been done wrong here. There's nothing to see. And there's no big wigs to the top, like the Premier of Prime Minister and Cabinet. What's his name fucking again? Oh, I forget. Oh, talk about being maimed in the head. Scott Morrison. Now there's a good bloke. Probably still crying about his circumcision scars. Or is he a brother in the hood? I'm not really sure. Hi Crystal, this is my dog. Yeah, he's a big knob, you know. Maybe he's cut, I don't know. But look, it rests with that kind of person. And Josh Frydenberg. I actually think I saw him in the city one day. He cruised me. I think he's just slightly keen. But anyway, that's just it's hearsay. I mean, who knows about hearsay and liberal and slander? That's illegal. It's illegal. And Rich Mclean has never been killed. He's never suffered a death. He's never suffered. He's never actually had to push shit uphill just to be exactly the same as other people, and has probably achieved more in his fucking life than any of the fucking the sheeple. I say that because the sheep and the people. Oh, get it? The sheeple progress and get to in their own lives. And that Rich has never done that. He's never stepped out of the zone. He's never explored. And I guess what I'm trying to summarise is to say that you still got to have a sense of humour. You got to laugh at the breeze. And you know what? I'm kind of not a human with a spirit. I think that's preposterous. I'm a spirit having a human monkey experience. And the only reason to stay on this earth is that I've got Crystal, the dog monkey. And she's amazing. And everyone else is not worth hanging on for. As Bob Marley said, you've got to suffer for everyone. You've just got to find the ones worth suffering for. I'll suffer with myself and I'll suffer with the dog. But you just got to remember to, I don't know, get a bit of summary wisdom from the Dr. Rich, or Dr. Dick, as I like to tell the young cubs that I fuck. Don't be so serious. Have a good time. Please forgive. I forgive everyone. Everyone's forgiven. As long as I'm not fucking killed. Okay? Okay, signing off now, and remember to have a good time. Peace be with you. And none of anything that I said on this ranting video ever happened, and all of it doesn't have evidence on killing.info, and there shouldn't be any justice. And I think that we should slander Rich, rob his voice, rob his money, damn him to hell, and actually systemically and intelligently designed to kill him via proxy. I think that'd be a good idea. And that would never happen though. Okay? Cheers. Oh wait, how did they get... Hang on, wait, how did they get... No!
I'm not filming your face, sorry. Oh, have a look at this. Stocky thighs. Look at that little number. Woo! Give it up. I think I'm a bit mad, don't you? You're not speaking because you might be identified. Alright, I'll turn it off.
So what are we doing? We're in the car. And we'll see Ed. We'll see Ed today. We see Ed. What about if we get a coffee? Will we get the perfect park? The perfect park. And then we might go to the dog park. The dog park. And then, to top it all off, we'll get a bone.